Good morning, this is the petrified forest, and these things down here that look like logs were trees back in the Triassic period, but now they've been turned to stone, petrified wood. And I'm taking a break here to talk some anime. Boくらの.
Boくらのis a sad but uplifting sci-fi anime series from Gonzo a year or so back. I recorded my first impressions of it back last fall after I'd imported the first 2 DVDs. At the time, I was really hoping this series would be licensed for some U.S. company for a North American release. Since that still hasn't happened, I've now bought all 8 of the Japanese Region 2 DVDs, and you'd be right to deduce from that I really love this series. I'd still love to hear that it would be distributed by some U.S. company on this side of the Pacific, but I'm not counting on it. Boくらのis based on a manga by Mohiro Kito. I'm told the anime has a slightly different ending than the manga. The story begins with a group of 13-year-old school kids at a summer nature camp. They come from several different Tokyo schools, and many have just met for the first time in the last week or so. But they're about to be bound together in ways they could never have dreamed. Exploring the island they're on, they meet a mysterious man who calls himself Kokopelli. He's hidden away in a cave and invites the kids to play in a video game he's created. The kids perform a very strange registration process that he directs, and soon Kokopelli demonstrates his game. Except this game turns out to be very real. The kids are transported, along with Kokopelli, into a massive giant robot. The Spartan cockpit or control room is furnished only by a strange circle of chairs. Kokopelli demonstrates a battle with another different, huge robot. After he defeats it, he simply mutters sorry, and the kids are teleported back down to the island to watch the robot disappear again. Well, the kids are a little confused and dazzled by what's just happened, and they decide that letting the adults know about all this may be not the brightest thing to do, since after all the robot, well, did cause some waves and some damage and a lot of excitement in the town. So they keep their mouths shut. But the kids are then summoned back into the cockpit a few days later, and this time, well, they're on their own. That mysterious man, Kokopelli, is gone. One pilot is chosen from among the kids by a sort of roulette wheel. Replicas of chairs, one from each of the kids' home, are arranged in a circle around the cockpit, and they rotate, and whichever chair stops at the control point, well, that kid gets to be the pilot. Waku, the first pilot chosen, is enthusiastic about the fight, but is inexperienced, and his efforts cause considerable damage to the nearby area. And that's not the only tragedy in store. Boくらのwill gradually reveal more information about this all-too-real robot contest as the series progresses. So far, I've only talked about the first episode or 2, but to really explain what it is I liked about this series, I'm going to have to talk at least as far as the 3rd episode. I promise not to give away anything beyond that point, but if you really want to avoid any spoilers whatsoever, then you should just take my word for it now that this is an incredible program and you should go out and watch it. Before the 3rd episode, the kids will meet a strange-looking alien creature who comes with the robot. He's called Koemushi. That name also describes an insect, a dung beetle, and it pretty much sums up the creature's personality as well. Koemushi will cruelly and gleefully explain that this game has a very deadly side, and it isn't just the collateral damage the robot fights are causing the community. First, the fights are determining the fate of the entire planet. The kids must win all the battles or the Earth will get destroyed. And second, the act of piloting the robot is fatal to the pilot. It's basically a death sentence. Fight or don't fight, either way you're dead. Those circling chairs to select the next pilot now become an exercise in terror. And so, Boくらのhas now contrived its premise, 15 middle schoolers seemingly doomed to die as they defend the Earth. You can quibble that this premise is deliberately manipulative, But if you'll make this one suspension of disbelief and accept it, then Boku no will reciprocate with a tragic and inspiring story as we learn about these kids, their lives, and how each, in his or her own way, learns to accept his fate. It's almost a series of short stories closely tied together. How they each decide to meet their end is unique to each child. They'll also form a unique bond among themselves. Together they name their robot Z-Earth. Many of their individual stories will break your heart. Boku no isn't about the big robot or the dozen fights or so. That's just a backdrop to an incredible set of human stories. A few, such as Kodama, seem mean and unsympathetic. Some, when it's their turn to pilot the robot, will use the incredible alien power of Z-Earth to their own purposes. Chizu's story was so amazing that it gave me emotional whiplash to go with my heartache. Obviously, these alien battles don't go unnoticed by the adults on planet Earth. Once the adults get involved with Z-Earth and the kids, things get even stranger. The government actually prefers to consider the rampages of this black alien monster as a series of natural disasters. It doesn't want to admit that the fate of the Earth itself is at stake because it's afraid that'll cause panic. And it doesn't want to admit that it knows who the pilots are, since then the government would actually be expected to do something about it. It's nice to see that the Japanese have a similar suspicious contempt for their politicians, just as Americans have for ours. JSDF officer Tanaka Misumi will become more closely involved with these kids than their superiors initially had in mind. Meanwhile, big business is interested in studying Z-Earth's technology to exploit it financially for their own benefit. Some hold out the hope that this science might also find a way to free the kids from their lethal bond with the robot. Boku no has many other nasty revelations throughout the series about the nature of this competition, domestic politics, and many plot twists inside the story, in and out of the robot. This series is brilliant in its cruelty, constantly finding new and surprising ways to twist the knife.
なんで俺なんだよ。これ夢じゃねえの？巨大ロボット？嘘だろ。そんなものあるはずないじゃん。戦うのか？俺がチェアスに乗って。
The first time I watched the final episode of Boku no, I was actually on the edge of my seat with my heart racing with excitement to see how it was going to end. This series inflicted so much unmitigated cruelty on its cast that you know that absolutely nothing is off the table here. This series has so many tragic moments it'll rip your heart out and then crush it. And yet, it does so in a way that's not just moving but also inspirational at the same time. As I said, this series really isn't about the giant robots, but I also kind of like the concept Gonzo used here. These are massive, lumbering machines. Most are not humanoid in shape. These are not nimble robots that jump around like ninja, and it gave Gonzo a chance to play around with their CGI toys. Aside from the robot, Gonzo's artwork is beautifully restrained here. They've done an awesome job with the character animation, reflecting the range of emotions these kids are experiencing. I also like Chiaki Ishikawa's bittersweet opening closing songs. It should be obvious by now that I really enjoyed this series. I give Boku no the full 5 stars. It simply blew me away. Within its 24-episode overall storyline, it provided a dozen stories that were not only melancholy but also inspiring and exciting. I highly recommend this series, and I still hope some U.S. company eventually license it for distribution on this side of the Pacific. Boku no is one of my major anime sessions, and that's why I've indulged myself by talking about it even though it has no North American anime release. Thanks for listening.